On tonight's episode of the Queer Eye After Show on AfterBuzz TV, we meet one of the most inspiring heroes that the Fab Five has ever encountered. We're going to talk about Wesley Hamilton and how he turned his tragedy into triumph on this episode, coming up right after this.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, honey.
We are back.
We are
Christine
back.
is here.
I am. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Queer Eye After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. If you are joining us for the first time, we are talking about Netflix's Queer Eye, episode 2 of season 4.
Yes, we are, honey.
Yes, and I'm not alone. First off, let me introduce myself. My name is Christine Alexis, and I'm joined by the lovely Anna K. Thomas.
Hi, guys. So happy to be here. I have missed you so much.
Yes.
JVN misses you too. And I am so excited to talk about this episode because it was a tearful one for me.
Ooh, I mean, what episode isn't a tearful one? I know we say this every season, but honestly, these guys continue to just up the ante and introduce us to stories and people that just deserve to be put out there. And tonight's hero is no different.
Absolutely.
Just initial thoughts on this second episode. We're discussing hero Wesley Hamilton. What did you think of this episode?
Love this episode. For me, the season premiere was strong, but fell a little flat in the emotional era. I know that JVN was super tied to our last hero, but with this, I felt like each member of the Fab Five was so tied to Wesley. And I love the title of this episode, Disabled But Not Really, because that really was the ethos of the entire episode and really embodied Wesley's spirit. And we'll get to it in our special segment, but each guy, I think, found something in Wesley that they related to. And for me, this was one of the biggest transformations that they've ever done.
Agreed.
Not necessarily the best episode in the series history, but for me, the biggest, most impactful transformation.
Yeah, I gotta say, easily this episode entered my top 3, and for that same reason, it was beautiful to watch the guys be transformed as well, and we see bits and pieces of that through different episodes, but this one I think really hit home in a way for these guys that they haven't before.
Absolutely.
Which, if you guys gotta stay tuned for our special segment, we'll get to that afterwards. But diving right into this episode, again, we are talking about Wesley Hamilton. He is a 31-year-old man who is paralyzed from the waist down. This happened as a result of an accident years ago, about 7 years ago, before the taping of this episode, where he was, it seems like, at the wrong place at the wrong time, dealing with an altercation, and he was shot several times as a result and lost all feeling from the waist down. So we're dealing with a hero who is wheelchair bound, which we haven't seen before on the show.
They've encountered a lot of different types of disabilities that people have made triumph over, but this was the first time someone was chair bound on the series.
Right, and just going back to the title of this episode, Disabled But Not Really, you see that in Wesley's spirit. I mean, talk about such a personable guy. Yeah. He just radiated positivity. I mean, considering his situation, and it's not to speak of him in a way of pity, but just understanding the gravity of what he went through and the spirit that shines through regardless of the trauma that he endured is just so beautiful and so inspiring to see.
Absolutely. And I want to just point out too, like, listen, he grew up on the east side of Kansas City. Like, there weren't many options for young men of color, especially when he was kind of growing up. You know, he dropped out, he got into gangs, he got into drugs. He's a single dad now. And what I love about this episode is that he starts off crediting that incident, getting shot and becoming paralyzed, as the impetus for making him better. He said, that's one of the best things that ever happened to me. As painful as it was, you know?
Right, and that totally blew my mind, because that whole soundbite to me almost sounded like something you'd get at the end of the episode after Karamo has worked his magic on you and you kind of have this full circle moment. But it was really unique that they were meeting him where he was, and it was at such a place of growth.
Yeah.
And just, you can tell he evolved so much from that day, But I love something that Karamo says later in the episode, that with Wesley, there's been a lot of growth, but not necessarily a lot of healing on the inside, which is where Karamo does his magic later on. But going into this season, we really want to focus a lot on how each member of the Fab Five attacks their task at hand.
Yes.
And that's how we're going to kind of break down this episode about Wesley. if you will. So I want to get started with Antony.
Yes.
Arguably, Antony had his work cut out for him this time, right?
I think he stepped it up a bit. I think that this season, Antony is trying to do more than just like really eat. I don't know. My opinion, I'll get hit on this in comments, I'm sure, but I feel like he has kind of done like easy-ish things that like weren't that difficult for the person to make. And I like that he was challenged because Wesley already likes food and he already eats healthy. He's a bodybuilder. He does pull-ups in his chair. It's amazing. And so Antony, I think, was challenged about how do I make healthy food now interesting for Wesley, because, you know, when they go to the grocery store, he can only shop at things that are wheelchair height, which I never thought about as a problem. I was like, wow, half of the things in grocery stores are not wheelchair accessible.
Yeah,
That's not empowering at all.
It's not, and you just touched on so many amazing things about Wesley in that one breath. You know, Antony's, you know, like I said, even though I think it was an easier challenge for him because Wesley knew how to eat properly, and like you said, he's a bodybuilder. He lost 100 pounds in his weight loss journey, but the added handicap that exists in our society of just not having supermarkets that are wheelchair accessible and friendly is where they had to meet him where he was at. If we want to judge solely on what Antony did produce with Wesley, they worked on a nice chicken salad that he could make at home, as well as a different variation on his love for sweet potato by making some sweet potato fries and a nice butternut squash kind of mash on the side, which was beautifully plated.
I loved it.
I'll give Antony points there.
On the plating.
The plating was beautiful. The concept was great. And I love the way that he got Wesley involved into something. At one point, he even said, you know, this is something I saw in cooking shows that I didn't know that I could do myself, which was beautiful. But again, the conflict and the challenge still exists there of how Wesley can continue to assert his independence while food shopping, you know, on his own. That's something that Bobby kind of solves his kitchen problem later on. But I guess it does just raise a really good question for us as viewers of how society can do better, period.
Honestly, and it made me question my own, because for me, I'm like, well, if a grocery store has, you know, a wheelchair accessible ramp and door and the aisles are wide enough, to me, naively, I'm like, oh, it's accessible.
Right.
I didn't even think about the top shelves of the grocery store and how the spices are all laid out. And if you want to try a different spice, you have to go get an employee to get you the spice. Like, who wants to really do that every single time?
Right.
And so this episode made me challenge my own perception of what is acceptable and not for people who are wheelchair bound.
Yeah, it definitely sheds some light on some able-bodied privilege that we have, being that we don't have those kind of limitations. But again, someone like Wesley shows that it's not going to stop him from doing the best that he can with what he's been dealt.
Absolutely.
And I think that shines through everything. So we're going to give Antony an A+.
I liked what Antony did. I thought that, A+ for me.
A+ for me as well.
Yes.
Yes, honey. We are going to move on and talk about Bobby, which we touched on kind of through our discussion already, but Bobby's our home improvement guy, and he had a very specific task at hand here. Right from the onset, from when we meet Wes, we see that the front of his house doesn't even have a ramp. The guy lives in
I know.
He's wheelchair bound, and he doesn't have the basic things to really even get in his own house.
Yeah, he has to go into the bathroom and back out. He can't even turn around. I mean, it's just so the bathroom has a curtain because there's no room to have a door. And he has a young daughter who, you know, how does it make you feel as a man to not even have a bathroom door on when you are living with your young child, you know?
Yeah, the bathroom is one of probably the most intimate spaces that a human can occupy.
Yeah, you want some time for yourself.
I mean,
you know?
a homeboy couldn't even look at himself in the mirror.
Right.
Like that really hit me in my gut, because when you wake up and the first thing in the morning, you see yourself, that's a moment where you can have a positive affirmation looking at yourself. There's so many, you know, just things that you can go through by just looking in the mirror that he doesn't have that opportunity.
Exactly.
Because of the way his house was set up. So Bobby went to work.
All right, Christine, you guys know I'm a little bit of a hater on Bobby sometimes because I kind of think he does the same thing over and over. I'm like, oh, he painted the cabinets black and like he did an American flag. And like, for me, sometimes Bobby recedes, you know, compared to the other four guys. Not tonight. I thought this was the biggest, best transformation Bobby has ever done in the entire series. It was a gut renovation.
That's very
It was
true.
a gut renovation. He did the front ramp. He took down the walls. He doubled the size of the bathroom. He lowered everything in the kitchen. He moved plumbing. He got the washer and dryer on the first floor so that he could do his own, so that Wesley could do his own laundry and his mom, Dawn, didn't have to. To me, I think less like this episode belongs to Bobby, and he's not getting the credit he deserves. And I can't believe I'm saying that because usually I am the one that is hating. But I thought Bobby. Yes. All the yeses. I thought Bobby knocked it out of the park, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, you know what, Annika, you really said it all. I'm just gonna go ahead.
What do you think? Were you not as impressed as I was?
I'm gonna have to agree with you. I was extremely impressed. I felt like based on Wesley's style already, the color palette that Bobby chose to kind of complement this grown man who knows who he is, it was just, he nailed it. It was spot on. It was wheelchair accessible, but still also friendly to the fact that he has a young daughter living in the house. There's not, if anything, it provides more space all around for everybody.
Yeah. And even the little details, like, guys, for him to pick a stovetop that only gets hot when other pieces of metal touch the stovetop so that Wesley doesn't get burned and his small child doesn't get burned, that is creative thinking. Yeah. So it's not just how do I make the space look beautiful. To me, and I'm sorry I'm so impassioned about it right now, but girl, to me, Bobby really thought about how can I make this man's life. He's already able, right? But how do I make his life enriched and better? And for me, that was one of the biggest highlights of this entire episode.
Yeah, I mean, because before the transformation, I thought it was actually really funny how he was taking like a wooden spoon and turning the dials. I was like,
and I love how he's a little country. He's like, this is how I cut it on. I'm like, yes.
Like, we're gonna cut it on, cut it off. But then looking at it,
it's
I was
black
like,
reference right there, y'all.
But even seeing it, I was like, wow, dude, your arm is gonna get burned. So like, major props to Bobby for just thinking outside the box on this one. I'm gonna go ahead and give him a double thumbs up because
seriously, okay, I'm gonna downgrade Antony to an A because I think Bobby should get an A+. The only A+, I mean, who knows what the rest of the season will hold, but that's probably my only A+ to Bobby.
Bobby, okay. I'm gonna up the
but he deserves it this time.
He does deserve it. Snaps for Bobby. Let's just take a moment to give Bobby some snaps. Stellar job. And I'm gonna up the ante though because the next guy that we're talking about, I feel really slayed this episode.
Let me guess. Wait, count of three. 1, 2, 3. Tan. Knew it.
Yep,
called
Tan.
it.
My lovely Tan friends, and I say my because I feel like I know him by now. I actually went to his book signing here in LA for his memoir, Naturally Tan, and it was amazing. He was just as fabulous in person,
so cute, right?
As he is on TV.
Did he or did he not have a French tuck?
He had a French tuck.
Yes,
he looked fabulous, and he was interviewed by Carson Kressley, who did his position on the original Queer Eye.
I love that.
For the Straight Guy, which was amazing.
I know. I was a huge original Queer Eye fan. Yeah, so I love that it's full circle. Yeah,
I didn't get into it, but now that I'm so into this one, I feel like I need to is it on Bravo? Like I need to go back and watch.
I know it's archived. We gotta find it. It's great. It's classic.
Super classic, just like my guy Tan, who absolutely nailed his task this week. Wesley is somebody who, going into just his situation, being wheelchair bound does limit you in your wardrobe, which in a way that I didn't even realize until tonight's episode, just the concept of outerwear, jackets.
Yeah.
Being an outerwear lover myself, I feel like me and Karamo are kindred spirits on this. I love jackets specifically, and that really can tie a look together, especially as someone who is the face of his own nonprofit organization. Having the right look is everything, whether it's to dress up in those scenarios or just feeling comfortable in your own skin going out and just having the ability to choose what you want to wear and not being limited by your situation. So the main concern that Wes brought forward was that he couldn't wear the jackets. And I thought Tan had such a clever and just simple way to attack the situation. Like, hey, you should probably invest in a tailor. And that little adjustment just opened up a whole world of possibility for him. I thought it was beautiful.
I completely agree with you, Christine. It's like the grocery store for me. Like I would have never thought about jackets getting caught in the wheels of a wheelchair. It's just not something that, I've encountered in my own life. So to see that was so eye-opening, so inspiring. I love to, jumping on what you said, when he goes into the fitting room, he's like, I haven't been in a fitting room since the day, my accident, before my accident, 7 years not going into a fitting room. And then he goes in, he's like, takes me a little bit longer, but I made this more difficult than I even thought I had to.
Right.
He was like, it's not that bad. and I am able to do it. I love that Tan's like, do you need some help? He's like, no,
Yeah.
I got it. I got it. I'm good. You know? So
Yeah.
it was such a powerful moment, and I can see why you were so drawn to that part of the show.
I think he just needed that gentle push again, like just getting into the fitting room and just letting him do his thing. And I'm so glad that Tan was there to kind of walk him through it. And I love that they had this emotional moment where, and this is also why I love Wes, and he's easily one of my favorite heroes. He took such a personal moment and totally flipped the script on Tan and asked him if he had always been this confident and collected. And we got one of the most emotional moments from Tan that we've seen in the past 4 seasons, where he opened up about, not always being this way. And going back to our point about how the show has changed the guys, Tan opened up about the fact that he didn't even come out to some of his family until after the show aired.
Terrifying.
Terrifying.
I don't know if I could do that.
Imagine it's out there for billions of people in the world to see, and the people closest to you haven't had that conversation with them yet. Really, really huge moment right there. So I love that they had that heart-to-heart, and I just think it just really brings it full circle that the same way that they're helping these heroes, they're helping them right back, and it's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
All right, we're going to move on to a little Yes Honey with our favorite, Jonathan Van Ness.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I love it. It never gets old, you guys. It never gets old.
I love it.
And it's funny because when the series first started, JVN was not really one of my faves. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to love him or gravitate towards him. And he's easily just such a fan favorite. And hearing him say yes, like I can't even get enough of it. It's great.
It never gets old. So pre-transformation, we have Wes with a long beard with some little scraggly ends, as well as some really nice, long, luscious, full natural hair.
He and his daughter have amazing hair.
Can
It
we
runs
talk
in the
about
family,
that?
those genes. Don needs a little help with the bleach. I'm not gonna lie. But but the
A little
family,
salt in there.
the family has good hair.
Good hair, good genes, good people, definitely. But yeah, daughter's gorgeous, also has a nice head of hair. But where he's at currently, it was more like hood chic and very just like that urban kind of pulled together look. Not exactly like a look that you would want to bring to an event where you are the face of your organization, or maybe meeting with people who could potentially be business partners for you or things like that. So I think what Wes really just needed was like an alternative to his normal comfy casual look.
Also, I want to point out that he hadn't cut his hair since the day of his accident when he had to go to the hospital. It got shaved or whatever they had to do in the hospital, and he had been growing it since then. For 7 years, he had the same hair and had not had it cut, and it was just growing and growing in the same style. So for him, it was a reminder of his accident.
Right.
And people would say, oh, your hair, and he'd be like, oh, well, I haven't cut it since the day of my accident. And I think he just wanted a new narrative.
Yeah, it's very interesting how you don't realize in the littlest decisions you make, something as simple as like not cutting your hair for a little while can be directly tied to a traumatic event that you've maybe suppressed the emotions you don't want to deal with. We've seen that with prior heroes too, who held on to their facial hair because it symbolized a time in their life where they either were in better shape or had more things going on. In this situation is the exact opposite. It's reminding him of the moment that changed his life forever. So there's a lot of weight going into this potential haircut, which happens. I just want to give JVN total props for leading with his celebrity inspiration for this hero, which was Drake.
Yes. He was serving me Drake and LeBron.
Okay, I see the LeBron too.
Yeah, with the beard and the shaved head. I thought Wesley looked hot.
He
and Brendan was into him too when we watched yesterday. He looked hot.
He's definitely a good-looking guy, like, period. Like, long hair or not. So I think cutting the hair, trimming up the beard, really giving it some shape, some depth, and just an overall put-together look just set his look off.
Yeah, and I love JVN, who's like, I'm going to bring in a barber because, like, am I great at a fade? No, but, like, I'm good at clipper, So, like, I love that he also recognized that he needed to bring in, like, the A-team.
For sure. And it also gave him a chance to have a nice little moment with Wes's daughter, Nevaeh. I believe I'm saying that right. It's Heaven backwards, which is beautiful. And give her a cute little blowout. So it's like the whole family family, minus maybe mom, got a little touch up, which
I love Dawn.
is cute.
She's so sweet and she sacrificed so much. And so I'm not dissing anything, but the bleach blonde just it has to go.
It's a little much,
has
but
to
I
go.
feel like JV and maybe the team were like, let's just focus on them.
Yeah.
Like, because real talk, if you want to give his mom her just due, that woman needs a whole episode of her own.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
she's a hero
Like,
in her own right.
put her whole life on hold for her son, as I'm sure any mother would do, like, for sure. But she is also deserving of her own little.
Yeah. She was lifting him when he was 240 pounds.
I know.
I mean, it's amazing that she has just been so present in his life and doing his laundry every week and all of that.
Gosh,
I
yeah,
know.
that's a lot. It makes me really think about my mom and appreciate the hell out of her for
sure.
wiping my butt when I was a baby up until, like pushing me and staying on top of me through my formative years where I wasn't exactly the woman I am today. It just definitely makes you
Yeah.
appreciate your parents.
Completely.
They're the ones who are going to love you at your worst. So the finished product, like we said, is a nice fade, nice little trimmed up beard, a blowout for his daughter, and loving it, right?
Loving it.
Loving it.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yes.
And now we are at
Yes.
the part of the episode where the lovely Karamo Brown does his thing.
Yeah, and this was one of your favorites, right?
It was.
Why?
Admittedly, I was tearing up really, really hard after this episode, like trying not to mess up my makeup. But I just think Karamo, he just seems to be the perfect person for this, a black man who is so secure in who he is and his emotional intelligence, kind of attacking a scenario with two other black men who obviously had this source of contention between them. And in other scenarios, no one would ever dream that they'd be in the same room together talking about a situation like that, let alone having a meeting of the minds and coming together the way that they did.
Yeah.
I thought it was just so nicely done.
And this is with Wesley, Maurice, and Karamo.
Right. The moment that we're talking about is when Wesley sat down with the man who shot him named Maurice. And it's a meeting that Karamo orchestrated with the blessing of Wesley, which I really appreciated that the show kept that moment in there where he calls them on the phone and it's like, hey, I want to set something up, but I need your blessing.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure, we can talk about like how a scenario like that could go very wrong without the right mediator being there for it.
Yeah, I thought this was such a powerful moment, and Karamo, again, really stepping in and shining. I thought last season Karamo was extraordinary, and this season he's proving to be just as impactful in these heroes' lives. And like you said earlier, Christine, it's like Wesley has been able to do great things. Like, he's got this organization, Disabled But Not Really. He's raising his young daughter with so much confidence and maturity, and he's really embraced that accident changing his life for the better, which I think is amazing. However, he has not really healed. He doesn't really go back to those memories and think about Maurice and what happened that night and his involvement, all of that. So I thought kudos to Netflix, kudos to the show, kudos to Karamo for making this happen and being so tasteful about it.
Yeah, and I want to also shout out Maurice because I'm sure as someone being the perpetrator of this, what changed Wes's life, it would be really hard to put yourself out there on national TV and face this person. So there's a lot of weight in it for everybody. Again, they did it so well, and I love the way that all the guys present were able to really take in the moment and understand that what they're doing is also setting an example for the generation after them of guys who are still in the streets kind of making poor decisions. And Wes is an example of what could happen, unfortunately, as
You're
a
product
result
of your environment.
when and Maurice as well, being on the other end of it and facing the consequences. He went to jail for about 6 or 7 years, I believe.
Yeah.
So, they both clearly learned a lot from the situation.
And I like, too, how they didn't apologize to each other. It was more of an understanding rather than Wesley going in demanding an apology from Maurice. Because Maurice wasn't going to do that. And it was more about, hey, man, you know what? I understand the circumstances you were in, and I understand the circumstances that you were in. And I get why we're both here now.
Yeah, I will say that was a little surprising for me because I did kind of expect maybe Karamo to push it a little more for him to say sorry, but like us discussing it now, I understand maybe why the words didn't need to necessarily be said. Because then it also kind of places like blame, I guess. And there is blame to be placed because that action had a direct consequence. But at the same time, through their conversation, even Wes understood. He said, I understood why you would have took it that way and why you did what you did.
Yeah, and you and I, like, we obviously have very interesting experiences in Black culture, but we're not like women on the streets in gangs and dealing with growing up in the east side of Kansas, you know? So that's a very different environment. And these guys are sort of products. Like, it's kind of like, you know, kill or be killed.
Right.
Like, that's really the ethos of those environments. And so I appreciated them both coming from that place and having a strong stance about it.
They're definitely better human beings than me because I don't know.
I don't know if I could either.
I really don't know.
think I could.
I really don't know that I could, and it's only speaking to how great of a person Wes is. Not knocking him for it at all. It's just
it's hard. You guys, let us know in the comments too. Like, what would you be able to meet with someone who did you so wrong, and would you be able to forgive someone like that? Like
even bringing it back into just current events right now, like the Me Too movement, you know, the concept of women facing their abusers. It just kind of goes back to like facing your trauma, looking it in the face and finding clarity there. But it turned out to be the just the best part of this episode, honestly,
really
because
good.
that's they were mostly focusing on like the physical and outward environment that Wes was living in, matching the beautiful growth that was inside. But they also really needed to get past that point for him to just blossom even more than he already has.
Does Karamo get an A+ from you?
Oh my God, A+.
A+++++. Yes.
A+++++.
Yes.
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 Just want to end on one note that he said that I loved. He said, Karamo says, forgiveness isn't a destination. It's a journey that continues throughout your life.
Yes.
And I know he joked in the episode that there should be a hymnal playing in the background. And I really felt like it because, my God, that was a dose of realness I wasn't ready for. So thank you, Karamo. Before we head on out of here, we got to get into our special segment. So, Anna Kay, take it away.
Special segment, you guys.
Woo-hoo.
Okay, so I want to focus today on this episode being about kind of being down and out, but not really. So for Wesley, it's disabled, but not really. And I want to do a little down, but not really with our Fab Five. So I want to talk about how this show has let them open up and let them overcome things.
For sure.
And I want to start with Antony. So Antony, you know, he doesn't go into detail in the show, but he talks about it through a couple episodes last season about facing addiction and about how he used food to help him get through that and how his love of food was sort of born out of him taking care of himself and battling his addiction issues. And so I really appreciate him opening up that way. And again, I'm sure more will be revealed over time. He was pretty, you know, he opened up, but is still pretty private about the details. But just to be able to give inspiration to other people maybe facing addiction or dealing with food issues, I think was wonderful.
Yeah, and one of my favorite moments of when a Fab Five member opened up about a time of being down but not necessarily out for the count was last season when JVN opened up about, you know, his mom dealing with cancer, kind of going through different health issues with his family and how that really put him in a place of just neglecting his own self-care, kind of falling off the wagon in his own way, and how he kind of, you know, had to lean on his family and really pick himself back up to get back to who he is and his love of grooming and just being his normal self and just coming full circle, which I really appreciated. I mean, just recently this year, he came out as non-binary, and that's something that I'm sure took years of growth and introspection and just growing as a human being. And so I really appreciated that. And the way that he is so transparent about sharing that at any moment that he can. Like, doesn't matter if he's giving you a blowout or just casually trimming your beard. He's going to have this heart-to-heart with you that only a fabulous gay hairstylist could.
And I love his heel selection this season. He's been wearing some amazing boots and heels and skirts and wearing it like, I mean, better than I could, you know? And I was like, I feel like I was born in heels. I love a heel. And I'm really proud of him for also showing that part in the show as well.
Definitely. We are out of time, unfortunately, for this episode, but I want to challenge you guys in the comments to let us know another moment where a Fab Five member has showed that they were down but not out in the same way that our hero did this episode. That's it for episode 2.
Oh, but it's okay. We have so much more. We have so many more episodes. I love being at this point in the season and not the end because we have so much to look forward to.
I love that too, right? And I definitely need to go to Target and get more tissues because I know that this is going to continue to make me cry. But until episode 3, guys, thank you so much for joining us here.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks for joining us on the Queer Eye After Show here at AfterBuzz TV. Again, my name is Christine Alexis, and you can keep up with me on social media on Twitter at Christine Bean and on Instagram at Christine I Alexis. Anna K, where can they keep up with you?
You guys can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Anna K. Thomas, but Instagram is my favorite, so go for me there.
Yes, follow her there, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.